Only PT-41, which carried MacArthur and his family, departed from Corregidor's North Dock. The passengers of the remaining boats were taken to Bataan in launches and boarded their PT boats there. 44. While his family boarded, MacArthur spoke to Major General George F. Moore, the commander of the harbor defenses of Manila and Subic bays. "George," he told him, "keep the flag flying. I'm coming back." PT-41 departed at 1945 on 11th of March and joined the other three 15 minutes later. A Navy minelayer led the PT boats through the protective minefield in single file. The boats then assumed a diamond formation, with PT-41 in the lead and PT-34 bringing up the rear. If attacked by the Japanese, PT-41 was to flee while the other three boats engaged the enemy. The seas were moderate, but most of the passengers quickly became seasick. MacArthur later recalled, "The weather deteriorated steadily, and towering waves buffeted our tiny, war-weary, blacked-out vessels. The spray drove against our skin like stinging pellets of birdshot. We would fall into a trough, then climb up the steep water peak, only to slide down the other side. The boat would toss crazily back and forth, seeming to hang free in space as though about to breach, and would then break away and go forward with a rush." I recall describing the experience afterward as what it must be like to take a trip in a concrete mixer. During the night, the four boats became separated. Bulkeley spent time looking for the other three boats, but was unable to find them in the darkness. At dawn he gave up, and headed for one of the alternative hiding places. Kelly's PT-34 was the first to reach the rendezvous point, a cove on Cagayan Island, 2 hours late at 9:30. There was no sign of the other boats, and Rockwell, in the same boat with Kelly, was far from convinced that Kelly had found the correct island. Some repairs were made, and the boat was refueled by hand pumps from the drums. 2 men were posted atop the island's tallest hill to watch out for the Japanese and the other boats. PT-32, which had only 2 good engines, had straggled behind the others. Around dawn, Schumacher spotted what appeared to be a Japanese destroyer heading towards him. He jettisoned his fuel drum so he could increase speed and run from it. He ordered his crew to man the .50 caliber machine guns and get ready to launch torpedoes. Akin prepared to toss a barracks bag filled with code books overboard. However, as the light improved, and the vessel drew closer, another look through the binoculars revealed that it was not a Japanese destroyer at all, but PT-41, carrying an angry Bulkeley. Schumacher was ordered to recover the drums he had jettisoned, but this proved to be a time-consuming task and a dangerous one in broad daylight, and it had to be abandoned after only a few drums were recovered. Bulkeley had his gunners sink the rest. The 2 boats then hid for the day in a nearby cove. In the afternoon, PT-41 and PT-32 made their way to Cagayan, where they found PT-34. There was a discussion about whether to proceed to Mindanao, or wait for permit. Bulkeley warned that the seas might even be higher. But, since there was no assurance that the submarine would make it, MacArthur decided to continue, departing in daylight at 1800 hours so as to be sure to meet their air transport there. Since PT-32 had no fuel to make Mindanao, its passengers were divided between PT-41 and PT-34. Soon after they had departed, PT-35 belatedly arrived at the rendezvous point. Akers found the crew of PT-32 there, and discovered that the other 2 boats had been and gone. He therefore set out for Cagayan de Oro as well. At 1900 hours, about an hour after they had left Cagayan, PT-34 and PT-41 spotted a Japanese cruiser. Bulkeley made a sharp turn due west, and headed at top speed, about 20 knots, 37 kilometers per hour, 23 miles per hour, into the setting sun. Whether because of the high waves, the glare of the sun, or simple inattentiveness, the cruiser did not spot them. 57:53, after midnight, the weather began to worsen, with heavy swells and sporadic squalls. Kelly later recalled, "Big foaming waves 15 or 20 feet high thundering over the cockpit, drenching everybody. Our binoculars were full of water and our eyes so continuously drenched with stinging salt that we couldn't see, in addition to which it was pitch black. We were making good speed through strange waters with islands all around us. We could see the outlines of the big ones, Negros and Mindanao, very dimly against the horizon through the storm. But there were dozens of small ones and probably hundreds of reefs. You had to keep one hand in front of your eyes to avoid the slapping force of the water, and yet you needed both to hold on." The Admiral was pretty wrought up. "I've sailed every type of ship in the Navy except one of these MTBs," he shouted at me above the wind, "and this is the worst bridge I've ever been on. I wouldn't do duty on one of these for anything in the world, you can have them." By dawn, the winds and swells had subsided, but the delay caused by the bad weather had slowed the two boats, and they now had to travel across the Mindanao Sea in daylight. Cagayan was sighted shortly after 6:30 on 13th of March. Although PT-34 had led all the way from Cagayan, Kelly now let Bulkeley take the lead, as he had the channel charts. PT-41 therefore pulled up at the wharf first, with MacArthur on the bow. They were met by Colonel William Morse, an officer on the staff of the Brigadier General William F. Sharp, the commander of U.S. forces on Mindanao. MacArthur told Bulkeley, "I'm giving every officer and man here the Silver Star for gallantry. You've taken me out of the jaws of death, and I won't forget it." A few hours later, PT-35 reached Cagayan. Willoughby later recalled, "We were behind schedule and reached the north coast of Mindanao in broad daylight. It was a clear, dazzling day. Fortunately, no Japanese planes cut across the blue sky, though the enemy was known to make regular mail flights from Mindanao to Luzon. We were pretty conspicuous as the hours dragged on." 60. USS Permit, under the command of Lieutenant Reford G. Chappell, reached Cagayan on 13th of March, and found PT-32. With two of his three engines out of action, Schumacher felt that his boat was no longer seaworthy. He had Chappell destroy the boat with Permit's deck gun. Chappell then took the 15 PT-32 crewmen back to Corregidor. There, 8 of the crew were disembarked, while Chappell embarked 40 more passengers, 36 of them codebreakers. Nonetheless, Chappell was ordered to conduct a regular war patrol, which he did. He finally reached Australia on 7th of April. Unaware of this, Bulkeley attempted to locate PT-32. Over the next few days he flew over the area as a passenger in various aircraft, including a P-35 and a P-40, in the hope of finding it.